Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are joining us from. Our sincere apology for the late start. We had certain issues that were quite unexpected. That said, I am excited that we have an opportunity to have a conversation that affects all of us as persons that are Ghanaians or that have interest in Ghana. So once again, on behalf of the UK GCC and PwC Ghana, I would like to say welcome and let's have a national conversation. Today, please do not expect the conversation to be technical. If at any point you realize that we are being technical, please raise your hand. My conversation with my panel members are that we want to ensure that everyone can contribute. So despite the late starts, I promise you we would end this session before 12 o'clock so that you can attend to other issues. I love my panel for today, and I'm going to tell you why I love my panel. The first person that I would like to introduce on my panel is Mr. Dan Nue. Whom I affectionately call Uncle Dan. We have our fights and we have our good moments. Uncle Dan is the acting revenue policy division at the Ministry of Finance. He has over 37 years of experience in tax administration, reason being that he started at the GRA and in tax policy because, as I said, he's with the Ministry of Finance. The conversation that we're going to have today would have a lot of linkages between GRA and the Ministry of Finance. And that is one of the reasons why I just love my panel, because we're not going to only give you a flavor on how things will be administered, but we're also going to give you a flavor on some of the thought processes that went in to bring us to where we are. The second person on my panel is Mrs. Mary Darkum. And I'm also going to tell you why I love this panel list on my panel today. Mary has over 16 years experience in tax matters. Unlike Danielle, she is a tax consultant, so she focuses a lot more on those that are required to ensure compliance. One of the interesting things about Mary is that she spent 3 years of her life in Tanzania, which is in the eastern part of Africa. So she brings to this discussion not just experiences from Ghana, but experiences from places outside of Ghana. And for those of you who don't know, PwC Ghana covers Liberia, and Mary is actually our tax leader for Liberian affairs, in addition to work that she does on Sierra Leone and Gambia. Between Mary and Danielle, that is already about 60 years of coverage. And somebody will ask, who are you? My name is Abeku Jankwansa. I'm a tax partner here at PwC, and I lead the indirect tax business across West Africa. Like Mary, I spent part of my life in Eastern Southern Africa, and I will stick to my role as moderator and ensure that my comments are held back unless extremely necessary. So let's dive in, have fun, and see what the next 1.5 to 2 hours presents to us. So once again, welcome to this quarterly tax dialogue. And before I go in to ensure that we are all on the same page and have a very insightful conversation, I would like Mr. Daniel and Mary to please unmute themselves, give us some opening remarks, and then we can continue with our conversation. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks to UKGCC for this opportunity to interact with you again. For us, it's very important that we have conversations with stakeholders, because as much as we like it or don't like it, whatever revenue is raised from the stakeholders. So it's important that once you are putting your hand into somebody's pocket, the person is given the opportunity to say something about it. We all know that this year has been an interesting one in terms of the budget. There's been quite a number of radical changes, if you want to put it that way. And there are a lot of things that are being done in relation to our tax system. So this morning, I believe that as we delve into the issues, we'll be doing a lot of listening and be able to give the answers that help all of us to go forward and work towards the development of our dear nation. Thank you.
All right. So, good morning to our moderator, Abeko. Good morning to my fellow panelists, Mr. Nue, and good morning to everyone who has been able to join us this morning. I'm excited to be here, and I'm also excited for us to be having this conversation. Because it's a new government, unfortunately, we couldn't have the benefit of getting the budget read in the previous year before we entered 2025. But we are now at least having the opportunity to see the budget. It has been read. We are in March now, and hopefully things move quickly, as fast as possible for the revenue that we are expecting to come through, and for the development that we are also expecting to experience to also come through. So I'm excited for us to be having this conversation, and I look forward to interacting with as many people as possible from your questions as well, and then from the moderator and the fellow panelists. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you very much, Mr. Nue. So let's begin and let's have a conversation. So our conversation this morning, or if you're connecting from somewhere with a different time zone, this afternoon or this evening, is on the tax updates in Ghana's 2025 national budget. So a number of words in there for you to appreciate. The focus is on the tax portions of our national budget. And to guide our conversation, we have a 4-point agenda. And I promised you that we are going to make sure that this conversation is a conversation that the man or the woman on the Medina Trotro can understand and also have a conversation, all right? Because this reset agenda that the government keeps talking about, and as Mr. Nia said, you must involve everyone. Otherwise, the economy cannot be reset. So we're going to set the agenda. From there, we'll move on to talk about tax measures. Then we'll open up for us to talk, and then we would conclude. So let me set the scene. What was presented to our parliament on the 11th of March was simple. Simple in the sense that the president instructed the Minister of Finance that go to the people of Ghana in line with the NDC's reset agenda and present a budget. So what is that budget? In addition, he instructed him that not only should you present a budget, present my economic statement to the people, or my economic policy to the people, so that the people can appreciate the surrounding circumstances for these budgets. So the question that starts is, what is the budget? So going into 2025, Government of Ghana says that I want to raise approximately 225 billion and spend about 280 billion. So if you take the difference straight away, we are saying that as the people of Ghana, we plan to add to our debt stock about 57 billion. So in essence and in summary, this is what the budget means. Now, for you to understand these numbers better, we need to appreciate where have we come from. So where have we come from? We expect that for 2024, we would raise about 187 billion. And when I say we are going to raise, we are raising the money from tax and non-tax. But what my panel will be focusing on today is the tax aspects. So let me give you an example. You go to the University of Ghana Medical Center. You go seek medical attention. You pay some consultation fees. Those things are not taxes as far as Ghana is concerned. Even though someone would argue that the state gets some form of revenue from that particular transaction. What my panel members will be looking at today is just the tax aspect. And I'll be drilling down there, opening up, and then we have a conversation. So 187 billion as far as 2024 is concerned, we expect that when we put everything together, we would have spent almost 250 billion for 2024, and then we'll add about 62 billion to our debt stock. The minister said in his budget that following the national economic dialogue and listening to Ghanaians, the people of Ghana are saying that we are tired. You should not manage deficit only from managing expenditure. Sorry, managing revenue, but also deal with expenditure. So in line with that, and on the instructions of the president, Mr. Finance Minister says they wholeheartedly agree with the people of Ghana. And therefore, they would also manage the expenditure. So if you look at where we are moving from 2024 to 2025, whilst revenues are going up by approximately, or expected to go up, sorry, by approximately 21%, expenditure is expected to go up by 14%, and deficit consequently would drop by about 7%. So maybe we can interpret this as an indication of government indeed saying that they wholeheartedly agree. But one of the things that you would appreciate, and I would like to emphasize, is that this is a budget. We would have to see how things will proceed throughout the year to see whether at the end of the day, we would realize this or make it worse off. Now, this is for the total Ghana. So individually, what does this mean to you? Let me break it down further. This budget should be seen in this way. Even though we expect to spend collectively about 280 billion, government says that the people of Ghana would collectively generate income of about 1.4 trillion. And it is out of that 1.4 trillion that I expect to raise some 225 billion to finance expenditure of 280 billion. So I will be going out to look for money, whether through treasury bills, through bonds of about 57 billion. So we're going to break down this individually. So if we break it down per individual, and we assume that there are about 34.5 million people in Ghana, okay, if we expect that we have about 34 million people in Ghana, then it means that government says that for the year, I expect that the average Ghanaian will contribute about 6,500 cedis. If you have a child and that child does not work, you foot the bills of that child and you add the child's own to yours, then multiply the 6,500 by 2. If your husband is not working, and as such, your husband will not be able to pay taxes, and even the money that your husband needs to eat, you would give it to your husband. Then you add that of your husband. If your parents are also not working, you add that. So if you are paying for 10 people, then ensure that at the end of the year, you pay about 65,000 in taxes to cover all this. But we know that we are all not equal. Our incomes are different. What we spend on are different. So this 6,500 is just the average amount that government expects to raise from each individual. Per month, government says 540. So we are in the 3rd month. So if you check your pay slip, and maybe you also add your VAT and related levies when you go out to eat, and you put them together, and they've not exceeded 540. So 3 months should give us roughly between 1,500 and 1,800. Then maybe you should be paying more. If you've overpaid too, then maybe because you are blessed than the others, or you have a lot more income, or you spend more than the others, Hence, that is why you've paid more. So why government expect that on monthly basis, on average, each person pays 540, government says that I will spend more on you, an amount of almost 700 cedis a month. So your roads, your doctors in the public hospitals, your policeman that will stop you when you are driving in the evening to make sure that you reduce your speed, or to signal to those that will rob you that, hey, I'm on the street to protect the people. We would put together and ensure that we would spend on average per individual per month about 700 Ghana cedis. And then you see that because government is spending more on you than you are on average expected to contribute, then government will be in a deficit. How does government intend to do that? T-bills, bonds, and we know what has happened as a result of the debt exchange program. So we have to raise a lot of this domestically. So when your TB rates are going up and government has to foot it, then it means that government's deficit will go up. So when I hear people complain that, oh, why are the rates dropping? I'm saying that yes, you may complain that the rates are dropping, but there's going to be a cyclical effect. So Mr. Danwe, if he needs money, he would advise the minister to finance these higher rates. We need more money in the kitty, and then you and I will have to pay more tax. So let's be careful what we ask for. So we hope that this breaks down the budget for the average person to appreciate what happened on the 11th of March, 2025. Because this is a budget, and the executive government cannot just be spending our money just like that. They need to go to the representatives, the people you and I voted by standing in the sun on the 7th of December, and ask for approval. So yesterday we heard, oh, e-levy cancelled, this, that, budget approved, blah, blah, blah. So if you are not happy with this, and based on my checks, hopefully Uncle Dan will confirm, my understanding is that the budget in its entirety have been approved. So maybe we just need to wait and then start having a conversation before July when the media review would be done. Having said this, even if the checks is correct that the entire budget has been approved, there are portions of that document that would require specific approvals, especially on the tax part, because the state cannot just put their hand in our pockets and take out money without our parliament saying that they are happy with it. So sometimes people are going hard so much on the GRA, sometimes be a bit lenient. I am not saying that GRA doesn't participate in the process, but let's be a bit patient on them, because it is your MP who was in parliament who would have said no, ended up saying yes. And that is why you are paying what you are paying. But to repeat, that doesn't mean that the revenue does not have a part to play. So having understood the budget and breaking it down individually and seeing in there certain opportunities that per month, if you are buying T-bills, whether 91 day, 364, whatever the magic day is, you would be contributing and helping government to finance that deficit. Let us drill down a bit more into the tax matters. Now, there are so many conversations going around out there. Oh, this e-levy, let's repeal it. This thing that have been titled betting tax, let's take it away. This emissions levy, we don't want to pay. The question that we need to be asking ourselves, and as you can clearly see in the middle of the slide, is that let's get a little bit more involved in the process by asking the more critical questions. Why should we repeal it? Are we repealing it because it doesn't give us sufficient revenue based on the efforts which the previous government described as a nuisance tax and has also been adopted by this new government And their political commentators also say nuisance tax. So in essence, nuisance tax is any tax which is raising some revenue, but we think that the effort, the burdens associated with raising that revenue exceeds what we believe we are getting from that. So is it because it is nuisance, it is not serving a revenue-raising role? Or we think that that tax is unfair? Unfair in what sense? Unfair in the sense that why should I, who earns less amount than, say, Mr. Nwe, and we are paying the same amount of tax, shouldn't you earn more, pay more than I earn? Or would somebody say that we are all in the same industry? Why should I pay this tax and you are paying less of an amount of tax? So I'd encourage us all to be a bit more critical and ask, what is the objective for introducing or for repealing or for modifying this particular tax? Is it because we say that revenue handle is not great? It is a nuisance tax. We think it's unfair. Or what do we want to encourage or discourage? So the popular one, betting. Is it a case that we want to encourage betting? Or is it a case that we are saying, hold on. The people are betting. The betting companies will make more money, so we'll collect it from the betting companies rather. So let's encourage people to bet more. Or are we saying that when companies are doing raffles, scratch and win, and if their customers win, there are tax compliance challenges, so let's take it away and rather change their customers rather than going through the withholding part? What are we trying to achieve? That is the objective question. Collection. Is it that the guy involved in small-scale mining is difficult to get him? He will smuggle. So rather, let us say we'll set up a gold board, sell to the board, or let the board be involved in the purchase. Let us treat them as cocoa farmers, where the income of a cocoa farmer is exempt from tax. And rather, the state makes a margin from the difference between how much we buy from them and how much we resell. Would that ease the collection? And then lastly, robustness to avoidance. The guy will smuggle if you tell him that come and pay 1.5% withholding tax. Whether it's a final or not, my audience or my panel will deal with it. So I rather say sell to the state. I bring a law that says that you cannot deal in this gold except you deal with the state or a body appointed by the state. We enforce the rules so we minimize the likelihood of avoidance. So I want us to be guided by these critical bits and less on the emotional aspects. I am not saying emotions are not important to the conversation. I am not saying perceptions are not important to the conversation. They are very, very much important to the conversation, but I'm saying that let's elevate the critical thinking above the emotional aspects. And of course, the politician would have to deal with the emotional aspect and the perception aspect because they are also very important. And what you can see below the criteria that I'm sharing is the other paper that was presented to our parliament, outlining the various laws that government intends to repeal. Once again, it is just to re-emphasize the importance of our parliament. Having said this, I would very soon be inviting my panel members to begin sharing their view. And for those who started with us, I said, I love this panel because this panel is going to help me to cover right from the policy aspect, the intentions, the reasons, down to the administration aspects. And we hope that we can quickly run through this, say in about 30 minutes, and then I can open up for the audience to ask their questions, and then we see what the rest of the time will be used for. So starting, government says that I am going to do 3 things that affect withholding taxes. Why is it important for businesses to know? In Ghana, we say our economy is significantly informal. And that is a very wide definition. Is it informal because people are selling in the markets? Is it informal because it is on the street stall? Is it informal because there are professionals that you cannot find? So there are various aspects of the informality. For those who have heard my views in the past, I've said, I don't even like us calling it the significant informal economy. I want us to call it the economy of Ghana, because that is the economy of Ghana. And let's address challenges that we think relate to that economy of Ghana. So government says, I'm going to do 3 things relating to withholding. Businesses must know this, because if you do not withhold, sorry, GRA will come and audit you. And when they audit you, they will sanction you for non-compliance. So even though you are playing the role of an agent to the GRA, and the GRA pays you nothing for that agency role, when you don't do your role well, you will suffer interest for non-compliance. So anytime the Monetary Policy Committee of Parliament meets, of Bank of Ghana meets, and they set a rule, GRA will just say, thank you for that amount, and then they will uplift it by 25%, and that will be your sanction for non-compliance. So if they say 20%, a quarter of 20% means 5%. So government of Ghana will say, thank you for not paying on time. Your interest rate is 25% for non-compliance. So for businesses, obviously, you are happier when they take away those obligations, because it takes away the non-compliance sanctions that will come along from somebody not complying. And my people will say, so this helps my people to avoid those things. So what are the 3 things? The first one is the issue around withholding tax on employees. Government of Ghana says that it is now an established practice that anytime the minimum wage goes up, and now it's going to go up to the equivalent of about 540 Ghana cedis a month, I would not subject that to tax. And once again, I promise you that as a moderator, I have my views on some of these things, but I will stick in my moderator role and rather ask questions. So that's the first withholding tax related stuff that we expect to change. I was fortunate to seal the bill. Maybe let me not call it fortunate, because the bill is with our representatives. It's in Parliament. It's a public document. I didn't see that in there. Mr. Noel will let us know why. Was it subsequently amended and introduced? Why should we continue with that policy? We'll discuss it. The second one on withholding tax is that if somebody engages in lottery, and we saw the conversation that went on lottery, and personally, I feel that conversation went on because certain persons may not have paid attention to the definition of lottery in our law, specifically in our tax law. Lottery is defined in our tax law to include 3 things: betting, gaming, and games of chance. So if you say, oh, NLA never implemented, that is true. But that goes, and that does not satisfy the full definition of lottery in our law, because there's the betting aspect, there's the gaming aspect, and there's the games of chance aspect. Why is government saying, I'm going to remove it now? Remember, there is not only betting, there's game of chance. I want to improve my business. I say scratch and win. Would that fall in? What was government looking at to say, I want to scrap it? The last one, which I've also mentioned earlier, deals with the small scale miners. Just to give you a bit of history, it started with 10% in 2015, 2016, when we brought our Income Tax Act, which is now about 10 years old, into being. Certain conversations went on. Oh, it's not fair. Why is the general withholding tax 3 and there's 10, blah, blah, blah. Government response and drops it to 3. Fast forward, noise were made, dropped to 1.5. Fast forward now, government says, I would not even collect it. What does that mean? Does that mean that small scale miners will be exempt from tax like our cocoa fine farmers? Are we expecting them to file returns? If that is it, I'm saying sorry. For them, largely, non-withholding means free money. Don't expect them to log onto the taxpayers portal to comply. And if you tag them, they will make it political, and then we'll have a political conversation. So we'd like to know from Mr. Nair, what was the policy rationale for these 3? And also would like to know from Mary, what are the joys and the compliance issues that may arise from these 3? So let me pause here, having given us all the background to this conversation, and invite Mr. Nair to come in to comment on these 3 withholding tax changes, the policy rationale, what government is looking at, and then Mary can follow up with the joys as well as the compliance changes and what businesses should know going forward. So, Mr. Nair, over to you. Thanks.
All right. Good morning again, and thank you, Abeku, for the introduction. And I think I'll start with some quotes, some of which we've got, some which might be new to us. But there was a gentleman in the United States called Benjamin Franklin, and he made an interesting statement that still resonates today. And he said that in this world, nothing can be said to be certain except for death and taxes. So whichever way we like it, there's some tax we pay. Whether it's not income tax, we pay a VAT, we pay some tax, some form of tax. Then there's another gentleman called Arthur Vanderbilt, and he makes another interesting statement. He says that taxes are the lifeblood of governments, and no taxpayer should be permitted to escape the payment of his just share of the burden of contributing thereto. So his is that once, and Abeku talked about it, that once we are citizens, we are residents in this country, there are certain services that will be provided by government. But we must all contribute our fair share. The way here is fair share, no more, no less, to what is being carried out. And this we do through the payment of taxes. And I'd like to make a small distinction between a tax and a fee or a charge. A tax, basically, we say is something that you pay, which you don't get any direct, should I say, direct benefit, let me use benefit advisedly from. Whereas when you pay a fee or a charge, it's for some service or some good that is being supplied to you. So you go to the hospital and you pay some medical fees, you pay for drugs. Those are things that are being supplied to you directly. So you see what you're getting. The tax we pay might not necessarily affect us directly, but indirectly, the policeman on the street, the roads that are built, the hospitals that are built, the public goods that we all enjoy. Basically, the taxes go to do this. In fact, I sit here and I have to work for the people of Ghana, so some of that money is used to pay me. And so these are some of the things which I think we need to distinguish between a tax, fee, and the charge. Because sometimes we bulk all of them together and say, I paid this to BME, I paid this to BME, they are all taxes. No, most of the things we pay to BME are just fees and charges for some service or some usage of something that they are providing. It is not a tax in the sense of what we are discussing today. Another thing I think we should take note of, we have taxes imposed on either some gain or some income or something we are earning, or something we are consuming. So you have a tax there, and basically our tax, most tax systems will determine on the environment. I think Abeko rightly said that the Ghana economy is basically an informal economy. And so you see that there are a lot more emphasis on consumption tax. And sometimes it's difficult to ascertain the income of individuals. And so our system has a mix of income tax, VAT, excise, custom duties, and taxes, mainly to take consonance of what our environment is. Now, before I come to the right question, there's one other thing I think I should have said in my introductory video. Now, the revenue measures that we put in for 2025 is supposed to help us achieve the fiscal target for 2025. The other thing is that we are working on that IMF program, where our non-tax revenue effort is supposed to be about 0.6% points annually of GDP. So these are the things we need so that we achieve some level of revenue and then our debt sustainability targets over the medium term. One other thing that the government has promised, and we should also take off that, the government has promised to conduct an overhaul of our current tax system so as to rationalize it, to improve revenue collections, and to ensure that it generates the necessary revenue required for national development without placing any undue hardship or burden on taxpayers. Tax basically does place some burden on us, but the idea is that how can we do it and reduce the burden? The burden won't go off because we will have to pay the tax. But how? And with that, I come to the withholding taxes that basically have taken off. I'll start with the two that were more of campaign promises, which were part of government's agenda. That government looked at the two taxes, e-levy and betting, or what we call winnings from lottery.
Hello, Mr. Nair.
Yes.
Yes, so we'll get there. I
Yes.
like the background you've given to our audience so that you can follow the conversation. So at this stage, the question to you was the idea behind the 3 withholding tax changes or the 3 proposed withholding tax changes.
Yes.
Yet to see what Parliament has passed. And the 3 are lifting the tax-free band or the tax-free income tax band to align with the minimum income tax rates. The second one is the repeal of the betting tax, which has been so called, but technically we call it lottery, tax on lotteries. And then the third one, is the withholding tax on small scale miners. And to be precise, unprocessed gold. So we wanted to know the policy rationale from your perspective. What informed these 3 changes? We'll obviously move gradually and get our audience to follow us so that when we get to e-levy, we can also appreciate that. So if you could please address these 3 for us, whilst, looking at your expertise also as a former GRA person, you can always come in with the administrative part, but Mary would be addressing the administrative part for our audience. Thank you very much.
Okay. Now, when I said that, I was moving into political economy for a particular reason. Again, to give our audience some background. That taxation is also imposed or removed for political reasons. In fact, you cannot take politics out of tax. A lot of countries, if you listen to the UK right now, to the US, Kenya, all over the place, tax is interlinked with politics. There are some decisions that are taken, and they are taken for political reasons. It's not only for economic reasons. So I will give us the criteria over here, so then we can look at more at the economic reasons that are treated. But then there is a political aspect to most tax decisions. So let me start with the one on betting. And we cast our minds back. There has been this issue of, in a sense, that it is something people attend to because of the problem of employment, or we're getting work to do. And so, though there are those who are working and are still gambling, there are those too that basically that seems to be our bread and butter. Someone made a very interesting statement some days back that the greatest thing, I mean, it is that person, but it was an interesting statement, is that we've churned out a lot of youth and a lot of people, but then they do not have access to employment. That was the way the person put it. I found it interesting because he moved off the issue of whether betting is moral or whatever thing it is, to the fact that we should also look from the other point of view of the person who doesn't have work to do, and that's all he can do to get some income. And let's know that what they get from betting is income. There was this thing about lotteries, and generally the idea is that one, the amount is required to be held, so someone must withhold it. For sports betting, it was a bit easier because when the payment is being made, basically almost all of it is automated, so you can follow it. So yes, something was being correct, but then from some of the other betting modules, it was getting a bit difficult to administer. So aside of the political reasons for it, administration was also another problem. And it meant that really we're targeting part of those you wanted to touch, but then you were leaving some of them out. And so sometimes, I mean, from time to time, you will look at a policy, take it off the books, go and sit back, review it, and see which is the best way to do it. I think we've done this thing about twice. We brought the tax, we took it off, we put VAT on it. Collecting the VAT was near impossible. And so some of the things, apart from the political economy part of it, has been ease of administration, how best to look at betting and see the best way to do it. Sometimes you don't keep a thing going when it's not being fair to some part of it. So you realize that when the tax was being taken, in fact, the proposed bill in Parliament didn't just talk about the betting part of lottery winnings. Lottery winnings covers games of chance, it covers betting, it covers gaming, it covers quite a number of other things. Anything for which you are placing some money on and expect to get some reward back in place of it. And so one of the things was that take everything off the books, go back, review, and see how best to, if there's a need to reintroduce, just reintroduce. Now with the withholding tax on gold, if you looked at the budget, it was linked with the gold board. And the idea is very simply to come to something similar to the cocoa board, where right now for small scale miners, all gold purchases from them or all gold exports will be done through the gold board. So apart from the large ones who can export on their own, everybody else goes through it. If it happens like that, normally, as Abeku said, having read the whole thing, it is expected that there'll be some small margin that will be made, and that one goes up and basically takes care of the revenue that government will lose. So cocoa farmers are not taxed, but we have what we call implicit taxation. There's some form of taxation in the rate that they are given, which takes care of the revenue that would have got from tax. Now, this is important because when you look at the tax that, as you mentioned the issue of the tax has come all the way down. It came to 1.5%. It still has not stopped this. So the issue is the government is saying that now for gold coming from Ghana, it must come from this source. So anybody buying gold from Ghana, previously you could buy from several sources. And so it made monitoring difficult. It must be from here. And what it does also is that then it means that we can sell our gold bullion on the London markets, which currently we can't. Especially most of the small scale, because it doesn't go through the process that allows us to do that. What it means that once we're able to do that, it widens the market. We can get a little more money for gold. The other thing is that because of the smuggling that is going on, I mean, you look at the records, it's very interesting. We still have a lot of gold being given as coming from Ghana, but on our books, we don't have that about those gold being issued. The other thing is to get all these buyers to buy from them. So once we do that, basically, and from the computations, if we are able to get about 259 million to buy gold on the local market. We tend to make more than $1 billion. So $259 million gives us about $10 billion in terms of turnover, revenue, dollars that will come into the country. So that one will also help us stabilize the economy. So it has several pieces. So in doing that withdrawal of the tax, there are several things that we expect to get back. And these are just a few of them. It means that the people become a bit more visible. We get to formalize our economy a bit more. Currently, we have 2 sets of licensing regimes, PMMC licenses, Minerals Commission licenses. Put them all in one place. So these efficiencies are expecting to bring us some level of revenue. And so if I'm using about 145 million cedis in taxes, and at the end of the day, I can get over $1 billion coming in, being turned over in the economy. It stands to a lot more. It means that the small coming, the dollar will depreciate less. We'll have less inflation. Our imports will become a bit cheaper, and quite a number of things would happen in the economy. So matching that one national goes beyond just the political economy. There are a lot of now the second one is the last one in terms of the rates. The government over a period has sort of come out with an unwritten policy, I should put it that way, is that there's always been a tax-free amount. Previously, we just determined a certain amount. Now, the tax-free amount for a number of years, almost a decade or more, has been more of whenever the minimum wage is taken, the minimum wage is taken at the lowest amount. Anything below the minimum wage is not taxable. What you earn above the minimum wage is taxable. So, though the personal relief has been there for quite several decades, this is just and that work with us. So, for the bills and other bills, the bills that went to Parliament immediately were the items that were immediately available. The PA, or the individual income tax rate, has to undergo several iterations. There are several things that are done to it, not just the minimum. There are some consequential issues that arise out of it, where you have to look at the bands, make sure there's no bracket creep. Oh, sorry, I should read that. You don't move people into places where right now they pay more tax than they were paying previously, or they have some negative income. They are getting less income because of the tax than they were getting previously. So there are quite a number of iterations which are being done, and at the appropriate time it will be completed to be brought to Parliament. We want to avoid, make sure that we are doing our addition properly, so that we don't have the problem we had last year, where at a point in time the upper rate in terms of addition was slightly different from what was in the chart. Okay. So basically, those are the things. Yeah.
So thank you very much, Mr. Nue. And just a quick comment so that our audience can understand. Mr. Nue is speaking from a policy angle, giving us government's intention. And I don't know whether he spent the midnight in Parliament seeing how the conversations were going. And even when they are done,
I left at 1 a.m. this morning.
1 a.m., okay. Even when they are done, the clerk of Parliament will have to listen to all the members that spoke, and if there are corrections that ought to be made, or amendment, let me call amendments that have to be made, following the deliberations by our parliamentarians, we will get to know what the final law is. So let's look at it that way. But Mr. Nue, just to ask, what is government's intention? I'm not sure what Parliament will finally give us for us to read. Will it be correct to say, and as I promised from the beginning, I won't share my personal views based on what I've read, but would it be correct to say that government's intention is that betting, whether it is called an income or not, will not be subject to income tax, 1, and then 2, our small-scale miners will not be subject to income tax on proceeds that they get from unprocessed gold. Is that the intention of government? Or we should expect that the withholding is not there, but GRA will chase them to file their income tax return and ensure compliance? What is the intention? And once again, I want to repeat so that our audience will understand. We are speaking from an intention perspective. what is the intention of government? When the bills are finally out and the president has assented to them, we'll see what parliament finally gives. But what is government's intention? Is it a case that it is just the withholding, or it is the fact that effectively those income now become exempt from income tax? Thank you.
Basically, for the lotteries, basically we are taking it off the books altogether. So you realize in Section 6 was amended of the law, and it took lotteries out totally.
Yeah.
Now for the gold, but let me say something here, and I think let me make it very clear. If you're not any one type of income, doesn't mean you might not be any other type of income. So you could be earning income from lotteries, you can earn, you might even be receiving gifts. All those are still termed income, and you have to file it. So I think let me make that one very clear. That the fact that some income stream is off does not mean that you do not have other income streams for which you have to file it. And I want to say that before I go to the gold. Now, for the gold, there was a withholding tax which was supposed to be collected at the point of purchase. That's withholding tax. Now, the law did not take out, because it would have been a bit difficult doing that in terms of taking off the tax on gold. It's not all of it that is small scale. It's not all the small scale, because if you look at the law, there were some particular criteria given as to who the withholding was on and who the withholding was not. And so what was taken off is the withholding tax. The next step as to the form which, if there's any tax on gold, a small scale will be, basically will come out after we've sorted out the issues of the gold board. After it's made clear, then if the next step is to exempt it, just like we've done for gold, income from gold, then, but at least this first step, there's no withholding on the gold at all. There is on the purchase of the gold at all. Whatever you receive is what you receive. The second step, as Abiku said, is something which is consequential and has to be looked at.
All right.
But then, even for those people, they are still required to. It's not only gold that they might be dealing with; they are still required to file it. And I want to stress on the filing of return. The fact that you are not receiving some specific chargeable previously, the law was saying that if you're not receiving chargeable income at all, you don't file return. But the question really is that who determines whether you have chargeable income? Are you the one who determines it, or is the Commissioner General who determines it? You self-assess all right, so you have a role in the determination. But sometimes it's better to err on the side of caution and file a return, even if all the places are nil, than not to file and then the revenue comes in and says that no, you should have filed a return, they did it, say they are going to charge you. After when you file the assessment, they have the right to say that no, this is right or this is wrong, but you've given them information for them to make a determination on it. And it's not they coming to you and charging you a penalty because they say you should have filed a return to declare some income which you didn't, which you thought was not chargeable, and then leads to a dispute. So that one is advice on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nguyen. So, Mary, what is your view on this withholding tax related changes, and what should businesses be thinking about? Thank you. Just on the three changes I talked about.
Okay, all right.
Husbands,
Sure.
And lastly, the small scale unprocessed gold.
All right. So thank you, Abeku, for the initial presentation. I like the way you have broken it down for the ordinary person to be able to follow and understand what the budget means for them. I'd say that largely the budget was a reflection of most of the campaign promises, and it's also a reflection of the manifesto that the NDC party, I would say, sold to the people of Ghana, for which we bought into and also voted them into power. And I'll say that they are not wasting time. Their first budget, which is what they presented, is basically in fulfillment of most of the campaign promises that they gave. Listening to the budget, there were so many aspects of it that I was excited about. Other aspects that I would say I was a bit disappointed. And also, these are emotions, and as human beings, we can actually take away the emotional aspect of the conversation out altogether, because we have also seen how some of these emotions have driven policies. And like Mr. Noel said, politics is part of government. Politics is also drives some of these policies. It drives some of the proposals that come up in the budget proposals. Now, going to the withholding tax measures, as you have mentioned, the first one is the 1.5% withholding tax on the sale of unprocessed gold that has been repealed or that has been abolished. And when you read the budget, the main idea was that it was supposed to encourage the sale of gold in mainstream and also curtail smuggling of gold. But then the question that one would ask is, how is the abolishment of the 1.5 withholding tax, how is it going to address this? So for instance, if someone has the opportunity to smuggle the gold out of Ghana and get better prices, would they not do it? Would the 1.5% withholding tax, would it be enough to encourage them to actually sell the gold locally? So the critical thing that we also need to be looking at is, how are our borders, the porosity of our borders, are we able to address them? If some of these things are addressed, it should be able to help us to reduce the illegal smuggling or the illegal sale of gold outside of the country, which I think is something that we definitely need to look at. And with time, once we take out this 1.5% withholding tax, we need to sit back and ask ourselves, are we actually seeing the increase in the gold sales locally? Was the 1.5% withholding tax that we've taken out, was it enough to encourage people to sell the gold in the local market? Or it's not having any impact, or it's even having an adverse impact? We need to look at all of these, because I believe that 1.5% withholding tax was an attempt for government to widen the tax net, because for a long time now, businesses and employees who are already within the tax net have been complaining that there is a lot of attention on them, because instead of the tax net being widened, it actually seems to be going deeper and deeper. So this opportunity for some of these small scale miners to actually contribute their small portion of taxes to the government, now that is being taken out. And I believe that the focus of this was actually to get the informal sector to be contributing their fair share of taxes to the government. Because if you look at our mining acts, small scale miners or small scale mining as an operation requires a license. So you need a license to be able to do small scale mining. And to get the license, you have to be registered. So ordinarily, those who are doing it legally, I believe they're already registered. And at the end of the day, they will file a tax return, declare their taxes, and then pay. And then this 1.5% withholding tax was only an advance payment, which they could take a credit for against their final tax that they'll be paying to the government at the end of the day. Now, the bigger question is for those who are not registered or those who are doing illegal mining. They will not be registered, they will not pay taxes, they will not file taxes as well. So this was an avenue or a channel for us to get something small from them. And a bit like you mentioned, this rate has actually reduced from 10%, then became 3%, and now eventually 1.5%. Maybe we should have seen this coming, that eventually this tax is going to go up from the way it has declined over the years. But in an attempt to widen the tax net, I would have thought that we would have maintained it so that they continue to contribute to their quota. But of course, further analysis or further data gathering just to see the impacts of this on gold sales locally will be critical for us to know whether or not it was a good thing for us to abolish it or we should have continued with it. And I'll sharply contrast this with employment taxes. We know how our employment taxes have actually increased over time. This is the PAYE bit. Gone are the good old days where the marginal income tax rate for residents was 25%, but now that has increased. It went to 30%, and now we are paying taxes at 35%. So for a faithful and hardworking employee like you and I, we get to pay taxes all the way up to 35% because it's been increased. But then for a small scale miner who presumably is not registered, they don't get to pay anything. Meanwhile, we are all supposed to be carrying the burden of building Ghana. So I believe it's something that we definitely need to look at. So for instance, in Liberia, the marginal income tax rate is 25%. It hasn't been increased, which is okay. And then for Ghana as well, it's gone all the way to 35%. Even though I know that employees are not making enough noise, but I guess if they had opportunity, what we'll be saying is that let's try and spread the burden. Let's try and get everybody to contribute rather than, taking away some of these taxpayers out of the tax nets. And then there is still a lot of focus and a lot of attention on those who are already within the tax net.
So
Now,
Mary,
yes.
I would do like what I did to Mr. Nguyen. Give us the compliance aspect of it. Because I know if I allow you, you will continue. Like I had to stop Mr. Nguyen. So give us the compliance aspects. What should taxpayers do with these 3 changes that are coming up? Thank you.
Okay. So thank you, Abek. So I'm actually also addressing it as we go along. Like I said, for those who are already registered as small scale miners, they should already be registered. And taking away this 1.5%, which is only an advanced tax, should not affect their tax compliance. They should still be paying taxes. But for those who are unregistered, this means that they are now out of the tax net. It will be difficult for government to actually chase them and find them to be able to pay their taxes due as far as the sale of unprocessed gold is concerned. The second one is the 10% withholding tax on lottery winners. So again, I believe that we've lost the opportunity to widen the tax nets because this withholding tax was again an attempt at targeting those who are earning income, which is not exempt in the law, and they are expected to also contribute to the tax. But now that that is gone, it means that the advanced tax payment that they would have paid will no longer be the case. The third one is the PAY, which is an uplift or matching the minimum income tax. Sorry, the minimum income to the tax-free threshold. So that one has also been in the budget, and it's something that I'll say that for every year, even if there's nothing in the budget, at a minimum, we would expect that there will be an uplift or there will be an increment in the tax-free threshold for it to be able to match the minimum wage. And I think this is a laudable idea that we need to keep up. Our comment or our question has been that, is there really a need to keep amending this table year on year? Or do we need to have a clause or a provision within our tax law that simply says that the minimum tax or the minimum wage is exempt from tax? So that means that for every year, as and when the minimum wage increases or as and when the minimum wage changes, then automatically that will be exempt from tax. And we don't need to keep going back to amend the whole tax table, because sometimes there can also be issues with errors here and there. So I would say that in terms of compliance for PAY, once the law is amended, businesses would have to make changes to their tax table or make changes to the tax formula that they are using within their system to take account of this minimum wage that has been exempted. That should give employees a little bit of relief. I've also spoken about the withholding tax, which is only an advanced tax as far as registered sellers of unprocessed gold are concerned. For those who are registered, they are off the tax hook. it may be difficult to get them again. But again, we need some form of research to be able to tie in the impact of this to the sale of gold locally. And the 10% withholding tax on lottery winnings as well, they are also off the tax hook. Those who are earning or those who are making winnings from lottery means that they are also off the tax hook, unless government puts in some more effort to make sure that they are filing their taxes and then they are also paying where required. And I make this comment just to make sure that as employees and also as businesses, if the tax net is widened, then there can also be some relief on those who are already within the tax net. So let me pause it here and then, yeah, we'll come back.
Thank you, Mary, for pausing, because I was just about to pause you. All right, so now let me get you and Mr. Nwe back on track. Mr. Nwe's role will be to give us the policy intent so that we as people with interest in Ghana would understand where our leaders are taking us. And you would help us from a consultant perspective to guide us on what we need to know. I plan running through the rest of our conversation in just about 20 minutes so that we can allow others to ask questions. All right. So we've just talked about withholding tax. We've looked at the rationale and we've looked at what we need to do. And Mary, I'll just repeat your last point, which said that as soon as those laws are passed and the things are there, businesses have to update. In other words, please, if you're a business, don't go and update your tax table because I've not even seen the table yet before you get yourself into trouble with the GRA. Next is the Growth and Sustainability Levy. This levy, government says that it should have died this year. The history of this levy, for me, I trace it back to the early 2000s, National Reconstruction Levy. Fast forward, change in government, the President Atamil's regime came, we now called it National Fiscal Stabilization Levy. It kept going. Banks cleanup came, and then it had a sibling called Financial Sector Recovery Levy. Fast forward, COVID came, IMF came, we decided to change its name, maybe because it got married or whatever. We now call it Growth and Sustainability Levy. In all these times, we've been told that these are temporary levies. Temporary for a quarter of a century. Would it still be temporary? Government says for all persons subject to this tax, we would extend it now to 2028. And then, if you are in trouble and you are not a small-scale mining person, arguably, and you are a mining company, not only are we going to increase it, but we're going to triple it. So you pay twice more than what you were paying. So, Mr. Nwe, we understand the circumstances we are in as a country. But why the extension again of a levy, a tax that was meant to die this year? We're actually preparing its funeral and getting ready to bury it to be extended for everyone that it applies to. And for those who are not aware, there's a minimum tax of 2.5 of profits. And if you find yourself in the extractive, you pay 1% of your revenue. So, Mr. Nwe, why the idea to extend this for another 3 years? Why didn't we allow it to die? Why the idea of not even making it permanent for us to be sure? And once again, if you pick those in mining, they already have a tax which is based on revenue. Why not just consolidate, looking at the fact that we've always been extending this for almost a quarter of a century? And the naming for me doesn't matter much as long as the fundamental principle remains. And all that we've been doing is either we expand to include others, but we've still been promised temporary. So maybe in the next 2 to 3 minutes, could you please give us the rationale as to why the extension, why the increment for mining companies, why was oil and gas companies not touched, even though they also have the 1%, as whether they are complying or whether they are obeying or whether they are absolved from their laws. That doesn't matter for my audience for now. What is the idea? And then Mary, what should businesses do not to fall foul of these proposed amendments? So in 2 minutes, let's address this so that we can continue. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you, Abiku. First thing, the growth and sustainability levy came about for a particular reason. We all know the crisis we were in, the crisis we are coming out of, basically, and our agreements with the fund, and to achieve that sustainability. Yes, the levy was supposed to end in 2020. But I believe that though we've made progress, we will all bear the fact that we still need to generate some additional income. And so the reason for keeping the levy is that we are still not out of the woods, and there's a need for us to contribute. One thing, as you mentioned, and I think we all need to take note of it. Prior to this, the previous levy was restricted to, I think, about 8 categories, or 7 or 8 categories. This one has been expanded to cover everybody, because we all need to contribute to getting us out of the challenges that we are facing. So basically, that's the idea, that we are not out of the woods. There's still the need to maintain the levy. The issue of actually making it certain came up as in the parliamentary debate. It came up that why don't we just take it off the sunset clause off and allow it to stand, so that like the financial sector recovery levy, where it states that the minister may review after the 2024 or the 2025 year assessment. The minister decides that let it go on. It goes on until the minister decides or the government decides that, okay, right now we are fine. But Parliament rejected it, and I'm sure when it comes out, it will still be the 2028 that has been proposed. So generally, that is that for GSL. We are not out of the woods, and so we need to continue. The issue of the sunset clause came up and was taken off. For the sector that's going to the 3%, that's gold. Anyone who's been following gold prices for the past year will realize that gold in around January 2024 was around $2,000 an ounce. Gold, as we see it now, has crossed the 3,000 barrier. So there's more than is a 50% increase in the price of gold. There's some economic rent that has been generated over the period, which, because we don't have any law that taxes economic rent per se, the country hasn't made any money out of. Meanwhile, the cost of producing an ounce of gold, what they call the all-in sustaining cost, per the industry itself, is no more than $1,500 on average, and that's even high for a lot. Some produce gold at the cost of around $700. So there's no gainsaying that they are making some level of additional gains, which is not. So no matter the cost that you put to it, everybody is making at least $1,000 extra on an ounce. And government says that what you're making on an ounce, the 50% you're making, it should be possible for you to pay 2% of that to government or to the country as their share of the additional profit that you are making, the additional wealth that you are getting from the wealth of this country. Simplicity, that's it. So that is why it's gold and none of the others. None of the others are booming the way gold. Just yesterday, I was reading an article that said that people are moving more and more towards gold mining. So the emphasis is likely that the price would, at the beginning of the year, middle last year, it was estimated that the price would go to $3,000 by the end of 2025. It's already $3,000 before the end of the first quarter. No one knows what's going to happen next. And so the idea is to tap into a little of that to help in the national. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mary, do you want to come in?
Yes, sure. So, Mr. Moderator, I guess, so just permit me to make this comment, then I'll come to the question that you've asked. Again, I see that this is one area where the TACnet, again, is going deeper instead of it being widened. So, yes, the gold price has really performed well over the years, and the mining sector is expected to contribute more. Would have expected the same for the small scale miners who, it's difficult to find them. But this is a situation that we also find ourselves in. So for businesses, they would have made projections and they would have also expected that come 2025, when the GSL was expected to die off, they would have hopefully improved on their profitability. And hopefully that's what they would have also projected and then shown to the investors. But unfortunately, it has been extended to 2028. So I guess for businesses, it's just for them to continue to be conservative, even though there is a sunset clause for 2028. It's likely that it may also be extended because government needs the revenue, which is fine. We just need to also see other commensurate measures on making sure that the TACnet is widened. Now, as far as compliance is concerned, I would say that the base has not changed. The base is still the same, which is gross production. It's only the rate that has gone up from 1% to 3%. So whatever the gold entity, the extractive or the mining entities were doing, they should continue to do it. It's just the rate that has gone up to 3%. I hope my comments were brief enough.
Yes, they were brief enough, and I am keen to make it briefer. So I will quickly run through the others and then allow you and Mr. Nweh to still pick the policy dimension and the compliance dimension. And then between yourselves, you can attempt to address any administrative dimensions on these matters. So VAT, two things that are going to be done. And the two things relate to exemptions. So government says medicines, or let me be more precise, essential medicines, I would expand the scope of exemption. Let me backtrack. VAT is designed to be as broad as possible. And if we want to do some specific things, we can do that through excise. The question that goes for Mr. Nweh from the Finance Ministry is that why are we closing up the gap? Is it because we need some essential medicines to keep us alive? That's fine. We're going to also exempt some imported raw materials for the pharmaceutical industry. Is the reason to keep us alive? That is great. But let's go to the industry for insurance. Government says that notwithstanding the fact that the non-life insurance policy was not properly implemented, I would ensure that there's proper implementation this time around. However, for motor vehicle, I would exempt because I want to transfer the benefit to household. Let's hold on. When you are driving your car, those on the side of the road that will pick trotro, don't they use commercial vehicles? Those that drives the Bugatti, whatever, when they insure their vehicle, why should they be exempt? If the intention is for household, people like us, people who take a lot of public vehicles or public transport, are to benefit, then why don't we simply say that the law would exempt motor vehicles, commercial motor vehicles? The law could have done that because we've already done that for transportation anyway. So we'd like to know the rationale behind why do you want to exempt for all motor vehicles, not just for commercial motor vehicles, so that you get your proper intent? How do you promote revenue generation criteria? How do you promote equitable distribution? How do we ensure that we address the regressivity of the VAT system by not applying this for everybody and rather focusing on the people that we intend really to benefit. So we'll get the idea. Mary, I would expect you to address the issue around the additional compliance issue that will come for non-life companies. The fact that they need to ensure that they only get it on allocation because they are a financial institution. Closely linked to that is the issue of exemptions. Government says, I would improve exemptions monitoring. We now have an Exemptions Act. The businesses on the call, if you are going to Parliament to say that the general exemptions we have in our law is not enough, do you know that Parliament can say, I will take a stake in your business? So that when you think your business is now doing well, you can decide to buy back the interest of the state. And because of the excitement of my panel, let me run through and add the others and give them 5 minutes each to address it, and then we can open up the questions. 1% e-levy. Abolished. We saw it in the media yesterday. The question that follows on with this is, are we aware that the economy is moving from a brick and mortar into a digital space? Are we thinking about how we're going to be raising a lot more revenue using a digital tool? Was the e-levy badly designed? Well, let me keep my comment, but my views are already known out there. But does it mean it should be abolished? Can we be a bit more critical to see how it could have been reformed to align with the changes in the direction of the economy from a brick and mortar into a digital space? Emissions levy. We say we want to be green. One of our ministry even has its name christened to include green in a way. Well, if you look at the bill, government says, I am withdrawing this to have a conversation. Is it going to come back? In what form? Mr. Muir can help us. Mary, from a compliance aspect, do you want to address that? Why should a trotro driver be asked to go on a portal to pay to pay emissions levy? Why couldn't the DVLA have addressed that concern? Moving on, 2% special import levy. This law is now, give or take, definitely over a decade. We were told temporary. We were supposed to die. We have now been like Ezekiel. We've resurrected it. When would temporary indeed be temporary? When would government keep what they tell us as people that they are ruling this country on our behalf? To say, I meant temporary and it's going to be temporary. Or are we at a point that it ought to be permanent? I hope Mr. Nia would help us address it. One of the exciting things on the block, government says 6% of the maximum allocation into the refund account, I will reduce it to 4%. A number of people have been confused. How would this increase tax? Don't worry, my partner will break it down, but let me attempt something. What the current law provides is that GRA, you have a mandate to collect money for us to run this country. When you collect the money, put it in the consolidated fund. We would allow you a retention so that you can pay your staff, incur your expense, etc. But we also know that you would have collected money which may be due refund. So we have created an account called a general refund account. We put in up to 6%. And then when people apply, you cannot go directly back into the consolidated fund itself, but you assess it from the refund account and give it to them. The law says at the end of the year, if we don't use up the amount that was placed in the refund account, we'll pay it back into the consolidated fund. That is the mechanic. What is changing by what the finance minister has communicated to us on behalf of our president? The finance minister says, I am going to ask the Parliament of Ghana to reduce the cap to 4%. In other words, it is no longer going to be up to 6%. what that immediately does for us is that funds that would have been locked up awaiting refund application and approval will now be readily available for us to use. So we can understand that. But the question is, did we really need Parliament to do this when the law already says up to 6%? Why is it that the refunds were not utilized? Because when the law was done and it was set up to 6%, we believe that there were studies done to make sure that 6% was adequate at that time. Are we sure that we've done enough study, or we are saying that because we've observed and the fund have not been used by about 50%, then let's drop it? Well, there's an argument in there. But what does this mean? Would the GRA now be stricter beyond reasonability to say that if you apply for a refund, it is due kadaya? In addition, in other words, previously, you know what you do when you apply for a refund. GRA can even do an audit on you and then give you an assessment to say that, having looked through your records, you owe 50 cedis, but you have a credit of 30. GRA will not offset to say, come and pay 20. They will say, apply for a refund of the 30. Never really made sense to me. I don't think that was in line with the law. I don't think so, after doing an audit. But that is what they took us through. Was it because we were frustrated? That's why we're not even coming back to get our money. When it frustrates me, I just move to Cote d'Ivoire, move to Togo, or move to Burkina Faso. What is the implication on this? So, Mr. Nwe, why couldn't we just say that the law says up to 6, going forward, we'll give the GRA not more than 3, so that if our circumstances change based on the 24-hour economy policy, and our businesses are exporting more, creating more jobs, but attendant to that will come more tax refunds, we could have been a lot more flexible. What study have been done really to support this? So, Mr. Nwe, you have about 5 minutes tops. Mary also about the same time to address these issues, and then I can open up for my audience. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Abeku. And thank you, everybody. I mean, interesting thoughts. I'm wondering how I'm going to do it in 5 minutes, but I'll do my best. First one, I think I'll start with special import.
Please try for 5 minutes for me, Uncle Dan, I beg. Please
Yes,
try.
Special import levy basically is following the GSL rationale. Same rationale, we still need the money. Circumstances have changed. The issue of either making it permanent or not has come up. I'm sure it will still be under discussion. So we'll get back to it. E-levy, as I talked about political economy, it was a promise. It's been done. I don't think really I want to go into anything else about that. And government made a commitment, government has kept the commitment. The VAT on emissions, again, emissions wasn't started, but the idea is to roll it back. The way is roll it back, sort out the challenges, and then the government is still committed to a green economy, and so there will be something that will come out later. But we are still working on environmental fiscal reform, so we'll get back to the citizens on that. And so that's for emissions. As I've done, VAT is the issue of the medicines. It's quite simple. We've already had an LI that gave us some medicines. After every 3rd year, there's a review that's done to see which essential medicines we are still importing and the cost, and just to make the cost at least affordable, the VAT exemptions are given. Same thing applies to the raw materials. And so that generally what is being done is the review actually should have been done about 2 years ago. It was never done. So that's what is being carried out. So it's a routine activity that we carry out. What happens normally is that if there are medicines that we are producing locally and we have comparative advantage, we take off the list of those that are exempt. So basically that's what happens. For the refunds, Oh, and the VAT on motor insurance is a very interesting one. The idea is that how do you help people have disposable incomes? Now, we agree that sometimes you can't distinguish, and that's where it makes it difficult. Because you want to do something for one party, but you can't do it for just one. I mean, you want to sew a shirt. Necessarily, either it will have to have some. It has to shirt. It has to cover some part of your diaspora, hair diaspora, on your shoulders or something. So you can't say that I want to go around just one shoulder and then leave it. It becomes awkward. I mean, there's different if you have one sleeve and you don't have another sleeve. But then you have one side of the shirt not there. It doesn't happen. So it makes it difficult. And when you sometimes distinguish between categories where they are not distinct, what happens is that you get people shifting to the other side. You have all manner of descriptions. One thing that somebody said a while back is that we should avoid making tax criminals persons, where you create a law such that other people cannot keep to it, or people will by all means attempt to evade it, and it becomes a crime if they do so. So the idea of the VAT on motor vehicles, yes, if you put it on commercial vehicles, public transport is exempt from VAT. It means they can't recover it. It goes back and that's the cost of transportation, which feeds into inflation and feeds into all manner of costs that you have. So the idea would have been, okay, let's take off just commercial vehicles. But I can assure you that all vehicles will turn into commercial vehicles overnight. The luxury vehicle, we had a problem with it because there were cars which were supposed to be commercial vehicles, which had registered as private vehicles. Because for commercial vehicles, you have to do renewal. You go to do renewal of the vehicle license twice in a year. People wanted to avoid it, so they registered them as private. When we started at the luxury vehicle, it turned into a fracas. So you want to avoid some of those things in administration. That is why we did it broadly for motor vehicles. I mean, all these things are subject to review after time. That's what we should all understand. Taxation is dynamic. You look at the environment, you look at the situation, and you come out with a tax. So you modify it depending on what needs to be done, and as time. The refunds is another interesting one, because the refund account, there's a ceiling on it, as was said, it's 6%. At the end of the year, whatever has not been used in the account is transferred to the consolidated fund for allocation. So very simple thing that shouldn't be a problem. The issue is that we'll be using up to just 43% of this amount every year. And it's an interesting thing, but I'll go into a little history. The original law when it went to Parliament was just to be 6%, in fact 5% of VAT only, not total revenue. Then Parliament said that you still have other taxes that you have to pay refunds. So you're going to increase it. Let's increase it to 6% of total revenue, so that there's money for other, whether you have to do an income tax return, whatever refund you have to do, you can do it from that account, which was agreed. But however, you realize that the 6% of total revenue is actually far more than we need. And so the issue is that limited to 4%, and then the 2%, which always sits in the account till the end of the year before you transfer it for government use it immediately for national development. Use it for whatever needs to be done in terms of expenditure, government expenditure that supports citizens. And so that's the idea, that it's basically a time value of money issue. Have the money now so that you can spend it on issues, that things that need to be spent on now, so that you don't have to wait and accumulate some arrears and then use the money to go and pay arrears with the attendant interest. So that's simply for this. I think I've done my best to cover everything.
Yes, you have. You have. Let me release you a bit. Mary, please come in, and please, if you can save some time for me, I would love it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Abeku. So let me start with the VAT exemption that has been extended to more raw materials in the pharmaceutical industry. and also for the import of medicines. So I believe that this is a good move and it's going to make inputs of these pharmaceutical industries, it's going to make it cheaper. And once it is cheaper, it means also that for the consumers of these pharmaceutical drugs or these essential medicines, they are going to be more accessible. And hopefully that should also improve on the health of the average Ghanaian. So it's a good move for businesses. When they are importing or when they are enjoying this exempt, they just need to make sure that indeed those items are listed and it is confirmed. And especially for the import, so that years down the line during post-clearance audit, they are not found wanting, because presumably they would have categorized an item as exempt, but then it may not have been exempt. So it's just for them to have that keen eye on this to avoid future dispute. Now, on the Exemptions Act, the budget is seeking to do two things. The first one is to amend the law itself for it to align with government's commitment of ensuring transparency and also promoting some specific industry activities, and also to introduce regulations to make implementation of the Exemptions Act easier. I dare say that can government look at, for instance, Section 14 of the Exemptions Act, which has been implemented since or has been in force since September 2020, right? Or is it 2022? I believe 2022. Can government look at Section 14 of the law, which provides for general exemptions? And those general exemptions are actually targeted at program-specific activities or industry-specific activities. So I believe that having a regulation to target these ones in line with government's objectives should be able to address what the government is seeking to do rather than amending the law. I believe that a regulation should be able to address what the government is seeking to do. Now, on the motor vehicle policy VAT exemption, yes, the law was there previously and then it was scrapped as part of nuisance taxes. Then it was reintroduced and now it's being taken off again. But I would even say that even when the law was in force, it was not being implemented. The insurance entities were not applying the VAT on motor vehicle policies. So now taking it out, I believe, brings a bit of relief, because if there is a law that is not being enforced, there is the risk that you could be held accountable for it. But now that it is off, businesses that are expected to have applied this can breathe and know that now the law is no longer enforced. The next one is on the special import levy, which again has been extended. And as Mr. Noe said, I guess government is looking at the possibility of making this a permanent thing, because definitely government will need the revenue. It will be a good time for us to see in our lifetime when government says, now I've collected enough money. I don't need to be extending some of these levies that I felt or that were brought in as temporary levies, but have been extended from time to time. I believe that that's going to be the situation that we are going to have, where these levies are being extended. So for businesses, again, when you are doing your projections, just take a conservative approach. If you are doing projection beyond 2028, assume that the special import levy will still be there. And at least if in 2029 it is repealed, then it's a good thing rather than not including it and then finding that it has been extended. Now, for the emissions levy and then the e-levy, again, this is in line with the government campaign promise that has now been implemented, or it has been included in the budget. And as yesterday, I understand that yet it has been passed already. So for this, there isn't much really for us to say as far as compliance is concerned, because it's a law that has now been abolished. It's just to give a breather to businesses and individuals who are finding all ways and means to maneuver and avoid paying the e-levy. Because I guess it was a levy that when it came, a lot of people had negative emotions about, and they looked for ways and means of avoiding it. Now it has been abolished. And so hopefully a lot more people will do their transactions through mobile money, through digital means, and not be thinking about doing cash transactions just for the purposes of maneuvering or avoiding the e-levy. So I'll pause it here.
Thank you for pausing here. So there were a number of things, but I'll skip it because I want to hear from our audience. Few takeaway points. If you look at the budget, the highest portion of proportional increase for tax is from customs. So my encouragement is that if you've only been focusing on domestic tax, VAT, income tax, please be minded. Government says in all these scrappings that I'm doing, I will be focusing on tax compliance. We know that the customs unit has a part they call the post-clearance audit. My encouragement, talk to your agents, get a consultant firm to review your records and make sure that you are in readiness, because we need to fill in the gaps from the other scrapped taxes. The next thing is government is saying, I'm going to focus a lot more in education. So we'll see what government will be rolling out. Dispute resolution on ITAB. Anytime I remember this, my heart bleeds. Bleeds because President Kufuor, as far back as in the 2006-2007, conceptualized the idea of introducing a means for us to address disputes with GRA in a more efficient manner. We are having a conversation almost 20 years later, and we still don't have that. We hope it comes to being. And one of the things that brings me so much joy, and I call it VAT and HER levies. The HER there means the health insurance levy, the educational levy, and the recovery levy will be reformed. One of the fights I've had a lot with people in government is the HER levy introduction and the way that the computations are going to be done. We are happy that government is saying on the next visit of the IMF, this will continue. So we'll be monitoring from April. And we expect that an update will be given, hopefully in July. If not, we expect that the VAT that we have now will be gone and not come again, so that we can do business, raise more revenue for the same government to come and tax from jobs that will be created. Part of the conversation that we've had today, or even a lot of the conversations, are from our 2025 national budget that was presented to our parliament about 2 weeks ago. If you need an independent views of business reflected, I would encourage you to just go on Google and you can download the PwC Ghana 2025 Budget Digests and get a cup of coffee and sip through the documents. If things are unclear, please reach out to us to have a conversation. If you believe, based on what I've been said, that you need a bit more tax training, we have a business school. Please feel free to reach out and let's have a conversation. Whether you want us to come in to your company to have a conversation or you join a general one, please feel free to do that. We are mindful that with all these scraps of taxes we're celebrating, and as Mr. Noel was saying, into the midnight, GRA would elevate in line also with a reduction in the refund account, a lot more compliance. What we've done is that we have a calendar providing you with a general compliance due date. And one of my former bosses would say that if you want him to help you to tax plan, the first thing he would tell you is that make sure that you can tax comply. So you can go on our website and download this for free. However, because I'm giving it to you for free, although I don't expect an error, if you find an error there, please, it is yours for the taking, because it is not professional advice. If you want to appreciate the previous media review and get ready for the media review in July, we have a 2024 media review document for you to read. And then lastly, if you want an update on taxes in Ghana, we also have that available. So on this note, and before telling you a bit more about the chamber, I want to invite Mary for her final comments, and also Mr. Nia also for his final comment in a minute each. Thank you. Hello.
Mr. Noel, do you want to go first?
Okay, Mary, go ahead.
Okay. So thank you, moderator. I believe it's an exciting time for specific industries, which is, I know that we didn't mention about the automobile industry that's also be making the 2 and 3-wheeled automobiles who are going to enjoy some concessions. And also it's exciting times for the pharmaceutical industry because their raw materials and import of essential drugs are going to experience some VAT exemptions. For individuals as well, I think they are the biggest beneficiaries of this particular budget because of the abolishment of the e-levy, because it affects everybody's pocket. Also the betting tax or the lottery winnings withholding tax, which has been taken out. For individuals as well, those who are involved in small scale mining who are unregistered as well, I believe that this is an exciting time for them. Also, because I speak on the business side, like Abeko said, there will be a bit more focus as well on tax compliance. And you will need to review your books to be able to make sure that you are complying with these taxes, because already you're in the tax net and you don't want to find yourself in trouble. So do well to reach out to your consultants to ensure that your books are well aligned and ready when the GRA comes to knock on your doors for an audit. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. Mr. Dwayne, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, everybody. And what I'll say is the supporting documents or the bills that would support the measures are in Parliament, with some have been debated and passed. What we expect next is that Parliament has to put them together. They will go to the President for assent. Then there will be some notices issued by GRA as to the commencement date. So let's note that the passage does not mean that they are convinced. Official communication will be received as to when all these things commence. And so please take note, visit the GRA website, visit the Ministry of Finance website, and there will be public notice also giving information. Thank you.
Thank you. So if if you transfer money to me today, you pay e-levy. That's essentially what you are saying.
Yes.
So I should not call my network provider to say that what is happening here.
That's true. So we'll give you the date when, after all the things and systems have been put in place, everything has been done. But we don't want to tell stop charging e-levy. The systems go to charge. We must make sure that the systems are
all right.
Shut up.
Okay. Thank you. So thank you everyone for joining. This platform has been provided by the UK Ghana Chamber of Commerce. It is a collection of businesses with common interest of growing their business. So if you don't have any chamber that you participate in to discuss business matters, or you have one already and you want another, would recommend that you join the UK Ghana Chamber of Commerce. Come and meet like-minded persons. Let's put our force together and approach Mr. Nye and his people when we are not happy with how they are designing the tax to move this country forward, so that together we can be active citizens and not citizens that complain without providing alternative means. So the UK Chamber, thank you so much for providing this platform. And I understand that the recording of this is also on your social media handles. So we'll go back, play them, and ensure that we remain tax compliant citizens who are active in building the Ghana agenda. So thank you very much, and I wish everyone the best of the day. Thank you.